video than I probably ever made before. Um, but anyways, so the title, right? Dreams sometimes need two eyes. And here's the premise: is I feel like over the past like 2 or 3 weeks, I've had a lot of crazy dreams, and whenever you look in the scripture, you see that oftentimes Yah speaks to his people through their dreams, but things are not of personal interpretation. So it is a very, a careful thing to present your dreams and to say, this thus saith the Lord. So that is not what I'm doing here. That's what I want to lay out right away, just so you guys understand that these are just dreams that have lasted with me through the night. I woke up, had some interesting thoughts tied to them, and I still am able to remember them. And this is like a really rare thing for me. Like usually with dreams, they're gone. Like I know I'm in a dream or I have a dream, but by the time I wake up, nothing. Right? Um, anyways, so throughout unleavened bread season and as we've been doing the Omer count, I've had a series of interesting dreams. Each of them have not necessarily been some big epiphany or anything, but they've impacted me personally, spiritually. And so that's why I want to do this video, because on the off chance I do start forgetting them, I want to remind myself. So, also, with the premise that perhaps there's somebody out there that really does understand dreams, because I don't think that person's me, but I do know I've had some interesting dreams over the past few, weeks. So, anyways, I'm going to just kind of recount some of my dreams that I've had, because once again, I want to remember these. And also, sometimes dreams need two eyes. And you know the phrase, I'll keep my eye on you. Well, each of us maybe, has a different perspective of how things can be understood, interpreted, whatnot. So here we go. So the first dream I had was shortly following our first Passover meal, as we were entering into unleavened bread. And I remember dreaming, I was with some friends from high school, and I was in this like mall thing, and I was shown this video of some of like my past sins on like a TV screen, and some people that I had affected with those past sins, and and then I remember turning around and looking outside and seeing this kind of golden glow evening, like the sun setting, lighting up the clouds in this beautiful kind of golden red look, and and I had kind of my heart leap inside of me in the dream, and I was like, I want to go look outside. And we step outside, and when I stepped outside, it's like I saw this like armada of angels coming down from the clouds, and they had like trumpets in their hands and like the whole show, but I didn't hear anything necessarily. And I remember being super excited in the dream, and I started running after these like angels that were coming down. I started to like float and fly, and and uh, and then I had like this like thought like, oh no, my friends! I'm leaving my friends behind, and I turn around and I see my friends are still standing on the ground, and they're not floating or flying with me. They're not getting lifted up and going after these angels. And and whenever I did that, um, all of a sudden I started to fall. I started to fall down, and I stopped being able to float. It was like I lost part of my engine or something. And um, and then the dream kind of jumped me to this like big, kind of like a warehouse, like a garage type thing. And I had in my hands this wheel-sized, like, kind of looked like a ancient, like a one of those ancient calendar looking things. But it in my dream, I thought to myself, this is a seal. This is a giant ancient seal. And and I had the seal, and I was like super interested in what's inside it. And in my mind, I was like, this is what was making me fly. My seal must be broken, and so I have to open it up to fix it. And I like either like threw it down and cracked it open or something, and inside it had like a mixture of earth and this like blue powder, and in my, in my dream I'm like, uh that's my, that's like earth, which is like reality, uh like the things that are in reality, and the bluish powder was like spirit, and it had to have this perfect balance thing, for it to work, but mine was broken. And so I woke up from that dream, and the thing that was on my mind was the Ark of the Covenant. And what was really interesting to me, as I woke up, and all of a sudden I'm just had this weird dream, but the first thing I'm thinking about is the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant, and how inside the Ark of the Covenant were very specific items, right? And I started to think about how the Ark of the Covenant might be a reflection of our hearts as believers. And inside the Ark of the Covenant, you had three things that I remember. And of course, if I'm wrong, please correct me, help me understand further. But in the Ark of the Covenant were the two sapphire tablets, the Ten Commandments, right? The law. Also, you had the jar of manna, and you had the staff of Aaron that budded when all the elders wanted to put Moses and Aaron to the test to see if they really had the authority to be doing the things that they were doing. That when they were put to the test, and they all wrote their names on their staffs, and Aaron's staff was the only one that budded. It says that that's one of the things they put in the ark. And just looking at those items, I started to think, wow, it's a good thing that they didn't put solid gold blocks in the Ark of the Covenant, or all types of treasure and earthly materials to keep safe in probably the safest place in their camp, right? The Ark of the Covenant. Why is it that they put those items in the Ark of the Covenant? Why wasn't it these treasures of immense value? And so I thought, well, maybe it's because the priests had to bear the ark on their shoulders and carry it around. And if they had put their vast wealth of gold and riches inside the ark, it would have been too heavy. They wouldn't have been lifted off the ground. They wouldn't have been able to carry it anywhere. And in the same way, maybe there's something to that in our hearts, that, if we want to be the ones that get lifted up, perhaps those items reflect a spiritual significance of what we need to have in our hearts, to not be too heavy, but also to have our hearts full of the things that Yah wants us to have them full of, which are a love for his law, his word, right? He writes his law in our hearts. That's what Jeremiah 31:31 says. Also, manna. What does manna represent, and what does manna make me think of? It makes me think of the provision of Yah in the wilderness. Um, it makes me think of the provision of Yah in the wilderness, where they literally trusted on him day after day to give them their needs and feed them whenever they were hungry. And then, think of the, uh, don't worry about a thing. The three little birds, don't think about what they're going to eat day after day. And as the psalmists talk about, and was turned into a famous song, right? But how much more will our Father in heaven keep us provisioned for, and take care of us if we're following after him? Thank you for turning the light on there. Anyways, and then, so that's the manna, and then also you had the staff of Aaron that budded, and this, I think it's tied to authority or boldness or something, just proving that when Yah designates who he's behind, they could trust in that. But I don't really know what the staff might represent. But if you guys have any insight to that, I would love to hear it. But anyway, so that was what was on my mind, and as well as the premise of, isn't it interesting when the king of Babylon came to take away the treasures of the temple, that Jeremiah the prophet took and hid some very specific items that were within the temple in the Holy of Holies. And those specific items were preserved from being carried off into that judgment period. And so that was also something tied to this thought process is, you know, we're told, pray you escape all these things by our Messiah. And we see that only one of the seven churches of Revelation, the Church of Philadelphia, actually is promised to escape the hour of temptation. And they're the they're the church of brotherly love. So what does it mean to become the church of brotherly love? How do we also prepare our hearts, which I've been, likening to the Ark of the Covenant, our hearts with, a heart that is only has what's in it that Yah wants in it. So that was the first little dream kind of thought process that I had several weeks back. Um, the next dream I had wasn't exactly tied to spiritual things, but it was tied to this recent kind of crypto project that I've been trying to get involved in and get upstarted. So if you're watching this, I'll get to the call to action after that because it's something I'm currently working on. But there was a dream that kind of spurred me on to really go after this idea. But in the dream, I remember seeing some people that I loved in this big building, and it had almost like a theme park inside the building with a roller coaster in the building. And I remember seeing there some people that I I much care about. One of them a former employee or employer, and they basically were sitting there, and they had taken the vaccine. They basically had like the needle and syringe like laying there, and I remember being so distraught. I was like, "Why did you do it? You knew better. You knew better. Why did you take it? Why did you do it? Don't you know what that does to you?" That's what I'm saying in the dream to my, former employer, and I was so shocked like that they would do it, and so I was like really sad, and I went and I saw a bunch of people that I used to know, and we were like riding around this roller coaster, and it's like I saw them on the back end of the roller coaster, and I'm like looking at them and waving at them, but I can't actually talk to them because I'm on this roller coaster, but they're a couple seats back, and you know how it is when you're on a roller coaster, you can't really talk to people. And so we actually get off this roller coaster, and we're in this like warehouse thing, and I hear some kind of noise out the front door, and it seems like it's evening time or something. And I go and I open the front door, and as soon as I open the front door, I saw these like nuclear explosions far in the distance. But I see there's like this wave of destruction coming towards us, and I turn around. I'm like, "Get downstairs! Get downstairs!" And and I knew that in the back of the room there was this jug of water, and that it would be super important for us to get this water, but there was only like a little bit at the very bottom of the jug. And so everybody runs downstairs, and I'm like running in slow motion trying to get this jug of water. And I get it, and I run and run, and I try to get down, and on the way of rushing last minute to get this jug of water to help us survive being hunkered down if there was some kind of destruction on the top side, I ended up spilling some of the water, but I made it just in time right when the dust cloud comes blowing in. And I remember one of my buddies was sitting there on the stairs, and this dust was coming down, falling down the stairs, in this bunker area underneath the building. And I'm like, get away from the fallout. Don't stand under that. That's radioactive, man. What are you doing? Get over here. Get away from that. And so the next thing I see is we're in this like big like work truck, like a big truck, and we have a bunch of people crammed in this truck, and we're driving, and we're driving through like rivers and on roads that are like cracked in half, and we're driving and we're going somewhere, and I kind of I look on the window, and I draw this like a cryptocurrency thing in the condensation on the window. And then I think about how the US in my dream, how the US is dividing, and it's dividing based on systems of exchange. It's dividing based on currencies. And my thought is, cryptocurrencies, right? People are banding together in groups based on how they're going to, conduct business and exchange. And so, and then I kind of see like a top-down view of the U.S. and there's like this big meteor. It like plows into Chicago from the coming from the west, and it goes through and lands it like destroys the city and goes into the lake. There, in a kind of a straight, from the west into the lake, destroying the city. Um, and then there's even more chaos and division, and then I'm in an airport with a bunch of people, and we're all in the airport, and um, we're like waiting for something. And I remember seeing these cryptocurrency coins kind of pop up in my view, like in my mind. And there was like four or five coins, but like I remember seeing like an Obama coin and like a Dodge coin, and I'm like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Um, and then I hear my dad's voice, and he goes, "I'm gonna do better than all of these coins because I have an American Grand Holdings coin in the Philippines." And I wake up, and I'm like, "What in the world?" That was a weird one. But it's like, one of those ones that I can't forget. So that's why I'm sharing it as part of this video. So it wasn't necessarily tied to anything spiritual, more crypto oriented. But um, uh, anyways, I actually was offered an opportunity to try to develop like a cryptocurrency project for a Christian community. Like, how do we create a Christian community that can have a system of exchange and value, but also kind of fuel the altruistic, nature of all of us in the church, that we want to give to projects and people in need. But how do we kind of all band together to be able to direct funds to, uh, to help, fertilize the projects that'll bear the most fruit? So that's something that that dream I feel like was tied to in my real world life, that was happening right around that week. And so just, call to action out there. If there's anybody that is involved in cryptography, programming, is interested in a Christian community typed, kind of like a, imagine a platform of Patreon, GoFundMe, and Facebook kind of combined, um, that is then powered by a cryptocurrency. So that's something that I'm working on currently. I'm up here with my buddy Tony, and I've been pitching it to pretty much anybody I can talk to because I have a good idea, but I can't make it happen on my own. So, once again, if you have any experience in that, let me know, and contact me. Anyways, back to the dream stuff, right? Um, about a week later, I had another interesting dream, and this dream was, um, man, it's funny how as you start talking about your dreams, now you start to forget your dreams, even though they're like banging around in there. Let me think for a second. Hmm, 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 hmm. Oh man, this one was a good one. Oh yeah, 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 okay. All right, so I was in this airport, and it was like there's these big hangars around me, and it's funny that I was kind of like forgetting this one because this is the one I've actually told a lot of my friends already that I'm like, what does this mean? But I was in this airport hangar, and I was kind of looking around, and I looked up in the sky, and this is the evening after Easter morning, or the first fruits on our calendar that we were keeping, and I dreamed it that night after that day, after that Sunday. And so I'm looking up, and I see this like kind of a pretty airplane kind of gliding above the airport, flying, um, and I'm like, oh wow, that's really nice, and I'm feeling like kind of happy and stuff. And then all of a sudden, this like dark black fighter jet, like stealth fighter jet, flies out of, my right hand side of view, and it just zooms in and just blows this beautiful airplane out of the sky, totally annihilates it, just like, and it rains down destruction and everything. And like my heart's, filled with dread. I'm like, oh man, that's bad, and in my dream, I'm telling myself like, oh, that's the enemy of God just accomplished something terrible. Like they just did a big thing. Like they succeeded in something bad. And this stealth fighter jet blows up this thing and turns around and starts flying towards me, and it starts shooting missiles at me. And I'm like thinking I'm about to die, and these missiles come and they blow up at my feet, and like I feel like shrapnel kind of peppering my body, but they were only like little like kind of like tickly pricks, right? It wasn't painful. It was just I felt something crazy, and I thought I was going to die, and I survived. And it shoots another one at me, and I feel the same thing, but I make it through, and I'm running towards one of these hangars. It shoots another missile at me, and it kind of bounces off the ground and misses. And I end up running into this big hangar, and inside of the hangar, I see this woman standing next to a half-built airplane, and the half-built airplane had one wing off of it on the left side, or its right side, my left side looking at it, had no wing, it had no propeller on it. I think it was like up on blocks, so it didn't even have wheels. I remember running up to this woman. I'm like, we got to get out of here. What's going on? This plane, what's the deal here? And the lady's like, we have to build this plane to find Elijah the prophet. And I'm like, we got to do it now. It's too late. It's too late. The attack, the fighter jet's out there. And I kind of got the impression that this airplane was supposed to be built already. And it's like a really sad thing in a way that the time that it would take to build that airplane had not been invested yet. And that the airplane, to find Elijah the prophet, who was supposed to dogfight this fighter jet that was destroying the outside world, right? It was in dilapidation. And but at the same time, I didn't feel really like total like hopelessness. I was like, we're out of time. This airplane's got to be built. We got to build this airplane. And so I woke up from that dream, and when I woke up from that dream, what was on my mind was a recent kind of series that I've just started. Literally the first day of the series that I recorded this was because I woke up from this dream and felt really compelled to make this series. And the series is that I find it interesting that according to Jewish tradition, they would read through Psalm 119 every single day leading up to Pentecost, or the Feast of Shavuot, during the Omer count. And every day they would read a separate portion of Psalm 119, each kind of divvied out by a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And I found that like really significant. I was like, wow, like what if that is an equation to receiving the Holy Spirit that they were told to wait on Shavuot for? And in all likelihood, what if it's a Psalm 119 portion that they were singing and praising in the upper room when the Spirit of the Most High fell on them? And what if that's what they were praying and singing and they were in one accord of? Was they had focused during that time, that Omer count, on turning their hearts into this fertile ground for a love of the Torah, a love of God's law, and trained their minds and their hearts to be in accord, to 100% submit themselves to the ways of the Most High. That in every action and every thought and deed, they were going to be obedient. And what if that creates, you have your heart here and, God's heart here. And what if by focusing on the things that he loves, what if it aligns the two hearts to become a conduit for his Spirit to basically flow into us, right? And so, oh man, so that's actually what inspired me to do this recent Omer Count series, and forgive me, guys, I'm not the most consistent, and I'm trying to work on it. And I know sometimes I post videos really late, or I have to do it the next day if I miss it. But I think there's something significant to getting our hearts to become like the heart of David. And anyway, so that was a dream I had about a week back or a few weeks back, um, and and then just like last night, I had another kind of really kind of vivid, crazy looking dream, and this recent one is kind of what's inspired me to want to make this little video, because I don't want to forget these, because they've spiritually impacted me in my day to day, just because they get me thinking like, what could they mean? I don't know, but what could they mean, and how could Yah be trying to speak to me? um and it makes me wonder, are you guys out there, are you having dreams and hearing from him, and what is he speaking to you? And I want to be very careful with sharing these, because I'm not trying to say let's go follow their gods or let's do something new, but what I do want is, throughout the scriptures I see that he constantly speaks to his people through dreams. He even speaks to the pagan, ungodly Gentile kings of the earth, like Nebuchadnezzar and Pharaoh, and that's kind of why I'm sharing these, is because we definitely see there's a significance to dreams, and some of them are pizza dreams. Don't get me wrong, but these dreams have been sticking around with me for a few weeks now, and I'm going to share this last dream I had last night. And as it is with dreams, bear with me as I kind of walk through it and try to remember how the order was. But um, from at this moment, the first thing in the dream was um, uh, a pastor that I used to work with. He was a man who loved to pray, and he recently passed away. And I remember seeing him sitting in a chair, and I was shocked. I was like, wow, this guy's dead. How is he alive? How is he sitting in front of me? And I remember hearing a voice that um, it was like God loved the sight of him praying in his church and walking around by himself praying, and he missed that sight. So he raised him from the dead. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And I'm looking at, this pastor that, has been had a big role in my life, but passed away. And I was like, wait a second. If this man who loved the Most High is back from the dead, I got to go outside. I got to go check this graveyard we're next to. And so I run through this door and I kick the door open, and I see all these people standing above their graves, and I'm like, wow, what is this? Is this, the dead are coming back? So first those who passed away are raised, and then us that are left go and meet the Lord. And I remember seeing these guys, and and then the next thing I remember, I was sitting in a classroom, and I remember, like, there was, like, it wasn't a big classroom, but there was quite a few people in there, and each of us had in front of us like some Hebrew letters. And I remember looking what was in front of me, and and like I saw like these Hebrew letters, and it was almost like somebody was telling me what the Hebrew letters meant, and the Hebrew letters spelt out my name, my name, and I don't know what it means, but it said, like, my name meant, has a different spirit, but his faces change, like something like that's like the vibe I got from it. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but I remember seeing that, and I remember kind of looking around. I was kind of like weird, like, what are we doing in here? And I got the vibe we were all in there like learning about the scriptures. We were in this like big classroom, and there's somebody up front, and they were teaching us Torah. They were teaching us the commandments, and I remember uh, so getting up, and then the next thing I remember is after, like, I stood up, and I think I walked out of that building or that room. um we were in another location, and in this location, it was almost like a virtual reality studio, and it was a very different location than this classroom location. And in this virtual reality studio, we're being promised that we are going to be in heaven. We're going to get to be in heaven. And it was like, put on these, virtual reality things, and, you'll be in heaven. And I was like, yeah, this is weird. And I remember watching people around me put it on, and they were like amazed. They were so like entranced, and they were just like, wow, I'm in heaven. And I remember I was about to put the virtual reality helmet on so that I could be in heaven, right? And I remember the guy who was like running it, he was like, we combine special frequencies and visual stimuli to jolt the mind and change the wiring of your brains. And I remember, like, last minute, like, I'm putting this helmet on, and I'm like freaked out. I'm like, wait a second, no! Like, I'm like, throw this thing off of me. And I'm like, what in the world? And so I wake up, and that was that the dream I had last night. So that was, I don't know if that one will stick around with me, but it definitely is fresh on my mind now. And um and over the past 2 days, I've woke up and had several, different dreams. Last night, I was dreaming about, like, it was like I was zoomed in on like viruses in the body, and I was thinking about how the body is a reflection of the spiritual realm in some ways. And like, whenever a virus is introduced to the body, we could call virus sin, or virus, false prophets, or, evil something being introduced to the world's spiritual realm, right? That whenever the body responds, it deploys white blood cells. And it made me think about how white blood cells, are kind of a parallel to prophets being raised up to challenge the false prophets, right? And how Yah balances things out in the spiritual realm so that we're not tempted too far in one direction or the other. In the same way, we had Jezebel, and you had, Elijah, right? They kind of were two opposites balancing each other out in the spiritual realm, but physically as well. You know, um, and so I was thinking about that, and about how this this mRNA technology, um, the way that it is developed is they put these nanolipids around this genetic code, this mRNA that they want inserted into your genes to be able to, you know, tell your body to create these spike proteins that will then help you fight against the big V word, the CV. And um, and I found it interesting that the way that this is designed to work is these nanolipids actually allow this new, therapy to bypass your body's defense mechanism, which would have, enveloped that stuff and dismantled it. But the nanolipids actually trick your body into accepting this code, and it allows it to be entered into your system, so that your body then starts producing these spike proteins. And it made me wonder if that's a parallel to something in the spiritual realm. What if it's a parallel to, there's a Trojan horse spiritually coming, or here already, and this, Trojan horse has kept the body spiritually from recognizing a dangerous thing, and has kept the body from deploying the natural defense mechanism, the prophets that would have challenged this evil code, this man-made code that is actually an abomination, right? And so, that was on my mind when I woke up, and kind of paralleled with that same morning, which was yesterday. Um, I thought about how the Ever Given. Are you guys familiar with the Ever Given? The Ever Given is this giant skyscraper shaped ship, and it entered into the Suez Canal, and it was one of the largest cargo ships ever. And because its power went out, it lost control. It got wedged into the Suez Canal, backing up hundreds of other ships from passing through. And and I thought about how, uh, what do cargo ships transfer? They transfer goods, good things, right? Or gifts, or whatever you want to call it. And Ever Given really makes me think of how Yah is always promised to give his gifts to those who asked, and to give his gifts. Um, but lately, I don't know if you guys have felt this way or had this opinion, but it's felt like the world has been very spiritually constipated, backlogged. And and I find it funny that this big giant skyscraper boat clogs up the Suez Canal in Egypt. And of course, we know that there's a parallel with Egypt and the world spiritually. The world is spiritual Egypt, in a way, and the U.S. has a lot of interesting ties to being Egypt as well. But this giant cargo ship transporting goods lost its operating system, and it crashed in and backlogged all these other things that were supposed to be passing through the canal. And there was a single dude with a tiny little, like, bulldozer, digging day and night trying to get this thing dislodged. Like a single dude. Like, he was like, yeah, I expected it to, to be going home, or what. I read this little article. He was like talking about he he ended up sleeping only 3 hours a night, and he just worked day in and day out to dig this enormous boat from the banks of the river, because he was the only guy with a bulldozer close enough to be digging it up. And so when you look at some of those images, it's just hilarious. This enormous skyscraper boat and a single little tractor thing digging away at the sand there. And it kind of made me feel like, what if these real world events have enormous spiritual, parallels for us that we can look and see, you know, what if that's what's happening to the spiritual realm? Is it's backlogged, and there's only like one little dude with a tractor digging away trying to get it unclogged. And how much faster would that thing have been unclogged and allowed to pass by if there were thousands of tractors and thousands of people all working together to dig that thing up and get that thing moving? And I was just thinking about that, and also I find it interesting that after just a week or so, they actually got it dislodged, which is amazing. It's an amazing feat. There was actually boats that diverted and were going to go all the way around Africa just because the Suez Canal was blocked. And those guys, they're regretting it now. I'll tell you what, they're probably still traveling around Africa to get all the way around. And they actually took the Ever Given, and they aren't letting it leave the Suez Canal until reparations are paid. And I think it's like over $1 billion of reparations, and there's still supposed to be some type of investigation on what actually went wrong and stuff. But I find it interesting that it's kind of in this time of inspection and in this time of holding, despite being freed up from being, stuck, the Ever Given is now being inspected during the time of the Omer count, which I feel like is also a time of us inspecting ourselves and inspecting our hearts, and preparing our hearts for that feast of Shavuot, because Passover is a twofold feast. Passover is this time where we get sin out of our lives, we get the leaven out of our homes, but and we start with the simplest commandment, right? The children of Israel were brought through the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, which is a type of baptism. And baptism, when you think about it, is one of the simplest or easiest commandments, just to take a dip in the water. But it is also one of the first that our Messiah commands us. He says, "Go forth into all nations, baptizing them, and then teaching them to do all things that I've commanded you," baptizing them in His name. And I find it interesting that that process is tied to the Passover season. saying, hey, I'm not going to be puffed up like leaven puffs up, but I'm going to be unleavened, and I'm just going to, get the sin out of my life. That's the Passover season in a nutshell. And the blood of the Lamb saves us from the destroyer. But also, it's tied intricately to the season of the Omer count leading up to the twofold part of the feast, which is Shavuot, which is the giving of the law and the giving of the Spirit in the Scripture. And it's just interesting to me that the Ever Given's being inspected during these days of the Omer count, and also that um, you know maybe we need to be inspecting our hearts. Maybe we need to be preparing our hearts to be hearts after the Most High's heart, because how can we ever expect one of those above and beyond messages, one of those angel visitations, right, coming and telling us where to go and what to do, if we're not already prepared our hearts to just obey even the simplest things he's already written in his word and asked us to do? So when things get crazy, when the world falls down around us, and when we need to hear his voice more than ever, if we're not just doing the bare minimum basics, how can we expect him to speak to us in those like more above and beyond type ways, right? And so that's why I think the time of Pentecost is so important, and also that why the keeping of his Torah, the keeping of his commandments, is also tied to the receiving and the filling of his Spirit, because whenever you love what he loves and you have submitted yourself to say, I'm not going to do it my way, as the children of Israel did when they did my glasses are like wonky donkey all this morning. As the children of Israel did when they worshipped the golden calf, they were like, oh, we're going to worship the God who brought us out of the land of Egypt, but we're going to do it our way with this sin of the golden calf, right? They build us an idol so we can worship as the Egyptians worshiped their gods, so we will copy them. So that's why this season is important, because it's all about getting ourselves ready to not do it our way, but to do it his way. And when we do it his way, he sends his Spirit to help us and empower us to walk boldly in his word and in his commandments. And then we can have no fear of anything but the Most High, right? Because we're doing it his way, and we're not figuring it out. It's really the most freeing thing over the years that I've started to learn about Torah, learn about his commandments and why they're not done away with, and why the least jot or tittle has not passed away. And so those are some of the thoughts that I've been having, and some of the dreams I've been having that have spurred these thoughts. That's why I'm sharing it all together, because that's why I've been kind of worked up about these topics. Is these dreams have made me think, what if there's some spiritual connections here to be made, in real world, and also in some of these dreams and stuff. But I'm gonna leave it at that. Once again, guys, I just I'm kind of recording these so for my own good, to have a reminder, to bring these thoughts and these emotions back that have been spurred in me, and also I want to be transparent, and if you guys have any insight, like I've titled this video, dream sometimes needs two eyes. And if you have maybe some insight or scripture that could help me understand further some of what I feel like Yah's trying to teach me, I'd be very grateful. So anyways, guys, thank you for your time, and I'm going to end this here, and talk to you soon. Shalom.